So Donald Trump is in a peculiar situation right now because when you look at the polling data amongst, Latinos, black voters, you see these gains happening. And there's a case for all these people saying they were better off under his economy. You want to keep those voters right there. What Kamala Harris is going to try to do is get him into this race war, right? To be vicious, to attack her as a woman. Don't put voters in that position where they have to choose between their economic situation and feeling sympathetic for Kamala Harris.
You can't get personal.
You can't get personal. I'm not saying that it is fair. I'm not saying that she may go low and call him a racist on the stage, but his response should be, you said that about Joe Biden too, and you went to work for him. So you have to be very strategic right there because they want ads of him eviscerating her from her personality and her being a woman.
Well, Chris Christie yesterday was on ABC, and he said essentially all she's got to do is, he had two words, charm and disarm. He said, be charming, be yourself, tell what your vision is, and disarm. When Trump says something that might be of a personal nature, just smile.
Well, people said that to him the last debate with Biden. Don't get personal. Don't talk about his cognitive decline. Just stick to the issues. And that worked well for Donald Trump.
Didn't have to talk about it. We saw him.
I think Chris Christie's one of the best debaters around. But I will say charm and disarm, that would be a win for Trump. And here's why. That means Trump just sits there and focuses on flip-flops and focuses on Afghanistan withdrawal, focuses on what his economy was, what he wants to do. And if they go back and forth and there's none of those moments of, excuse me, I'm talking, or him saying something disparaging like you were, now all of a sudden you're black and you weren't, if there's none of those moments, Trump, I think Trump is in a really good spot at the end.
Well,
if they have a conversation.
The problem, though, Brian, is unlike Joe Biden, she is a skilled prosecutor.
Yeah.
And she's been putting people on the stand for years, for the majority of her career, and she's used to baiting people. And it's different than a debate. It is prying off of people's emotions to get confessions on the stand. And that's the part this is not a Joe Biden style debate where someone doesn't know where they're at. But she's fully aware where she is.
She has to stand by her record, though. Her record says it all.
Right. And here's the thing. Remember, she wound up as vice president because she was so good at debating Joe Biden. She put Joe Biden on the spot, reminded her, I was the little girl on the bus. And that was it.
But Steve, she put himself in a box. He said, I have to pick a woman. And he told Clyburn, I got to pick a woman of color. So it was between him and Mayor Bass.
I'm just reminding folks that she did a good job on that debate.
Until Tulsi Gabbard took her.
Yeah, and we're going to interview Tulsi coming up.
And that was about her San Francisco record, her California record. And I'm wondering how much President Trump goes into that, her record as a prosecutor and a DA.
To be helpful. Donald Trump just finished a press conference, 3/4 of which was about grievances related to that past conviction related to alleged sexual assault. I know when you were campaigning, you said you had no reason really to question the findings of the jury related to the defamation case brought by E. Jean Carroll. I'm not asking about the specifics of the case, but if that's the focus of a press conference for a presidential candidate, A, is it the best use of his time? And what is the message to female voters to be going through this again?
Well, I think the focus for me is on policy. I think
But he's the candidate.
No, and I've always said, look, if I thought Biden or Trump were great candidates, I wouldn't have run for president. I ran because I thought I could do a better job.
You don't think he's a good candidate?
I think he is the Republican nominee.
Now they've got about 100 days of a honeymoon period that might very well last 50 to 60 days, where people are still going to be just excited that they have Kamala Harris. They're not going to dig into her record. They're not going to be bothered by her record because they're going to be so excited for probably the next 50 days. Well, we've only got about 100 until a general election and even fewer to early voting. So don't get too comfortable on the Trump side. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this later, but the attacks on her personally, on whatever her past personally may have been, or calling her a childless lady, none of those are going to work.
Impulse. You can't imagine that anybody who understands anything about politics would say, hey, here's a great idea. Go to the National Association of Black Journalists and question whether Kamala Harris is really black or not. This is what happens, George, and this is how you can tell that this race is changing. Because what happens is when Donald Trump's ahead and he feels like he's comfortably ahead, he is willing to go with conventional, smart political advice. As soon as he thinks it's getting close, he goes back to the greatest hits.
You'd like to think that in a normal world, there will be certain things, regardless of where you're going to put your vote, if you're a MAGA, you're supporting Kamala in November, certain things should be outside the environment of politics. School safety for kids. Yes, seems a pretty obvious one, but you do ask the question. J.D. Vance this week and Mark Robinson, another buffoon, were almost normalising school shootings, saying, well, it happens. That is not the answer. Doesn't matter where your politics are, that isn't the answer. Reverend Warner today on NBC's Meet the Press had a few words. You do not need to agree with his politics, but you can't say he's wrong with what he's saying. J.D. Vance is just, the guy's a disaster.
Senator, I guess just going back to my original question, though, is there a specific law that you think could have prevented this tragedy when you have a case of a father gifting his son the weapon, according to authorities?
Listen, 14-year-olds don't need AR-15s. And we need to get these military-style weapons off the streets. 87% of Americans, Democrats and Republicans, according to a Fox News report last year, believe that we ought to have universal background checks, and still we can't even get that done in Congress. Listen, there is no one single law that will stop all of these tragedies. In a sense, I think we have to broaden the scope of the question, because after all, we have 2 mass shootings a day in our country based on the data just last year. And this does not happen everywhere in the world. The problem is that we have politicians in our country who are beholden to the gun lobby, and either based on ambition or fear, they go to work every day doing their bidding while the gun lobby lines its pockets with the blood of our children. I can tell you as a father that there's nothing more precious than that morning time when you walk your kid to school or drop them off, and you want to believe reasonably that a few hours later you're going to be able to pick them up. And the reality is that in America, it's not safe to be in our schools, it's not safe to be in our shopping malls, it's not safe to be in the spa, it's not safe to be in a medical clinic. We're all sitting ducks. And any country that allows this to continue without putting forward just common sense gun safety measures is a country that has, in a tragic way, lost its way. Politicians need to realign their values. Yeah. And this is what it means to have a democracy. If we can't protect our children, what are we doing?
All right. Senator, let me play you something that J.D. Vance had to say. He made headlines this week by saying the way to deal with this issue is to focus in part on school security. Take a look.
You've got some states that don't have strict...
British pop star Charlie XCX posted Kamala is brat on X. If you're wondering what this means, the reference was to the singer's most recent album, Brat, which has an iconic bright green cover. Brat topped charts around the world and emerged as a summer cultural phenomena among young people, explaining what it means to be a brat. Charlie XCX, you're just that girl who is a little messy and likes to party and maybe says dumb things sometimes, who feels herself, but then also maybe has a breakdown but parties through it. It's very honest, it's very blunt, and a little bit volatile. The concept behind Brat took the internet by storm, with many appropriating the album cover style and writing funny, sometimes outrageous messages against a bright green or a brat green backdrop. Kamala Harris' campaign has leaned into the brat summer trend. Their fast exploding X account announced the creation of an Instagram campaign page, Kamala HQ. The pinned post on the Instagram account is a photo carousel that includes a screenshot of Charlie's X post, as well as a brat green square that says, "Welcome to Kamala HQ." This is the official rapid response page of Vice President Harris' presidential campaign. The post is captioned, "And when we put this to bed, the internet will go crazy," a reference to a song on the album titled Girl. So confusing, the Kamala HQ account bio says, providing context. This, too, refers to another popular meme associated with the vice president. In a speech in 2023, Harris relayed this anecdote: "Everything is in context. My mother used to, she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, "I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree."
You commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable. Specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. You know, I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, child care is child care. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including child care, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country. Because I have to stay with child care. I want to stay with child care. But those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars, and as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you. Very good question. Thank you.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.